Hi, everybody. It's Mr. Whalen, and we're going to be talking about topic 1.1, which is ecosystems. So our learning objective is to explain how the availability of resources influences species interactions. And the suggested skill that we're going to focus on today is to describe environmental concepts and processes. So ecosystem basics. If we look at the individual level all the way up into the biosphere, an individual, we have one elk. And if we have a group of elks, they're all the same species. That's an elk herd. That's a population. One level above that is a community. And you'll see questions about this occasionally. The community level includes different species. I like to think of the Lion King. You've got lions, you've got giraffes, you've got birds, wildebeest, all different species in one area. And then the level above that is what we're looking at today is an ecosystem. And that includes, if you think back to some vocab you probably learned in bio, the biotic parts, the plants and the animals, and the abiotic, the non-living, rocks, soil, water, and air. And then if we look at it from the upper level to think like a mountain, the biome level is a large area with similar climate conditions that determine plant and animal species there. An example is a tropical rainforest. You probably did a biome project at some point in your scholastic career. So let's look at organism interactions, and each of these is important to know. So this little chart is good for just a quick glance, a reminder of the ways in which the species are either helped or hurt in each of these interactions. So if we look at the first interaction, it is competition. And in colloquial language, competition would mean that the two baseball teams are playing and they compete and one wins and one loses. But in ecology, in competition, two organisms are fighting, but they both lose. They're both expending energy by competing. You may have one that wins the acorn or wins the shelter, but by expending the energy and competing with another species, they are both being hurt or losing in that interaction. And the important thing about competition is that it can limit population size. Predation should be you should be familiar with. It's when one organism is using another for an energy source. So something is hunting or a parasite or even herbivores, which we'll touch on. A mutualism is a relationship that is mutually beneficial. So both things are benefiting. An example would be a coral reef. And in commensalism, which is the one that students often forget, that is when an organism is like a freeloader. A bird finding a tree to nest in. The tree is not bothered by it. It has no negative interaction there, but it doesn't gain anything either. But the bird gains something by finding shelter. So let's talk about predation. And first off, as I just mentioned, herbivory, or eating plants, is a form of predation. The herbivores are predators to the plants. They're using the plants for energy. True predators are carnivores, so they will kill and eat their prey for energy. So a leopard is a predator of a giraffe. Parasites you're likely familiar with. They use a host organism, and they will not kill it. So they're gaining something all the while the host is losing energy. They're providing energy to that parasite. In this picture here, you've got a sea lamprey that is attached to this fish, and it's gaining energy, sucking blood away from the fish. Parasitoids are going to actually use a host organism in a different way. So you've got an example here with this wasp. They will insert their eggs into this unsuspecting poor caterpillar, maybe not unsuspecting, but the eggs will then hatch and eat the caterpillar, and so the caterpillar loses out there, obviously. Symbiosis. A very important term here for the test. The key thing in a symbiosis is that it is a long-term interaction. This is not just an altruistic act. That's a one-time thing. And it's also between two organisms of different species. All right. Mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism are all symbiotic relationships. In a mutualism, organism of different species living close together in a way that benefits both. For example, coral, which are animals, are going to provide a reef structure, and CO2 for algae. The photosynthetic algae are going to provide sugars for the coral to use. There's a picture of some coral and how that relationship works for them. A lichen, which you've probably seen but maybe aren't familiar with, is a composite organism of fungi and living with algae. And the algae provides sugars, which are energy, and the fungi provides the nutrients. You'll often see these on the bark of trees. All right, competition. Competition, as I mentioned in the 2 slides ago, can reduce population size since there are fewer resources available and fewer organisms can then survive. A very important concept here in this section is called resource partitioning. If you break that down, resource is a food, shelter, any form of energy, and partitioning is breaking that resource up. So resource partitioning is when different species are going to use the same resource in different ways, and it reduces competition. So it's, in a way, a sharing of the resource in order to live a little bit more harmoniously. So here's some examples. So temporal partitioning, temporal meaning time, is using a different, using the same resource at a different time. So wolves and coyotes, pictured above, can hunt the same prey species, but wolves will hunt during the day and coyotes will hunt during the night. In spatial partitioning, organisms are going to use the same, use different areas of a shared habitat. So in this picture in the middle here, you've got this grass and this tar bush. They are in the same area, but their roots are spread in different ways as to share different sections of the soil. And then you've got morphological partitioning, which is using different resources based on different evolved body features. At the bottom here, you've got the black-footed ferret and the ermine, and they have different tooth structures to be able to use similar resources in the same area, but they are better able to use those resources based on their skull structure. Okay, so our practice-free response question for this section is to identify 2 organisms that compete for a shared resource in this food web, and then describe how resource partitioning could reduce the competition between the 2 organisms you identified.